youth
Yeah,
player?
so I'm Drake Iddon. So what people will know me for is so when Podfin started, it was obviously a buggy mess and no one really went there. Once the sites had been fixed, um, and it suddenly became this incredibly lucrative region. And lucrative back then was 4 trillion a month on the MER, not the monster it became. So I went back into Podfin because I was previously in the Kybernauts, invited by a friend. So me and Beta Page, who was my Corpsio, and two other friends, we essentially went in and stole everything that wasn't nailed down from the locals, and we were making ridiculous money. So we became quite infamous there. So the seagulling era, if anyone ever mentions seagulls in the Podfin or even in my brain's gone. I'm so tired.
It's all good.
In faction warfare, like the seagull name came from us stealing stuff in Podfin,
My
and we
god.
kind of like ran with it. And I've got like a seagull mask somewhere. I used to go on interviews and have it on. We just like lent into the whole thing that became our identity.
Amazing.
Um, and from there, I like we moved on to other stuff, and we started like having like multi-boxing because we all got filthy rich. And I pivoted to try and get I did to two things really. One was the like I fell in love with the region. I still love it, as broken and disastrous as it was. And I really started pushing for to CCP like, look, it's printing far too much money, and you will have to deal with this eventually. The longer you leave it, the worse it's going to get. Not just for the nerf you'll have to do to Podfin, but the worse damage it will cause to the rest of the economy by a huge margin. Um, and the other side was the cheaters, because Podfin was such a lucrative region. RMT is inevitably moved in, and from there, any other cheats like input broadcasting, botting, things like that also came along with it. I'm just going to make a cup of tea.
Yeah.
I need the caffeine. Um, so I ran for CSM twice unsuccessfully, but in the background, I was still kind of trying to foster a relationship with any dev I could. I fostered a relationship with the devs who ended up being the ones that worked on Podfin and didn't get it finished before it went live, essentially, which obviously wasn't their decision. It was a game designer's decision, game
Sure.
director's decision. And I did get a few like interim patches through. So we had a small wave of minor bug fixes. We had a big waterboarding problem where it kind of become like a blue triangle, and there was very low destruction for the very high ISK it was printing. So I had some small changes to NPC behavior, a very small amount of site balance, and also the acceleration gate in the flashpoint, which is for printing all the money, was just made it larger, so a single dictator couldn't bubble it with impunity. Because what they would do, they would throw dictators at it once every 2 minutes. They would crash the gate after decloaking, then bubble, and then you couldn't. If most people couldn't boost it off, and if they did, you just put another one down, and it was very easy to cover the entire bubble, even if you got targeted really quickly.
Yep.
So that was one of the first successes that I got through. And then at an undisclosed date, because it's covered by NDA, I was contacted by CCP, and this was in 2024, to say, look, we are going to do and not an insignificant amount of work on Podfin. Are you interested in working with CCP Rampant?
Some.
To which I said, yes, of course I am. This is like what I've been wanting for ages. And we worked on the Revenant changes, which was the first initial pass at Podfin. One of the big bugs was he's actually messaging me now saying, "Am I up for your interview?" I'm going to link it to him.
Yeah. Well,
Everyone
tell.
say hello to. Everyone say in 5 minutes. Everyone say hello to CSP Rampant.
Perfect.
Why is he awake anyway? He's in the
Because he's
same
here for
time zone I
you,
am.
bud. You're amazing. He wants to be here supporting you. You're just yeah.
Um, yeah. So the big patch back then was one, a big rebalance of the payments, which was a reduction to get the MER down, which we then wanted to redistribute some of it later on. We wanted to have like a few month period to make sure it's working out as planned. And the biggest thing was CC Rampant, instead of just rebalancing the payment, he ripped out the entire site, root and stem. There were 4 sites before, if I recall, one for every single faction. And he ripped all of them out because only one was working, which was the Amar one. He brought in a new one, which is a dynamic dungeon system, which is like, there was an old archaic system from what I understand, and there's a new shiny new system, which is also what the home fronts use.
Yep.
Which is why they have the support for the objectives on the side, which update in real time, and then you've got the NPCs popping up and reacting to certain triggers. And from that one site, he essentially, the first thing it does when someone warps to it, it determines where it is in Podgfern, the previous owner of Podgfern, and then it runs a little calculation of like a weighting, random chance weighting, and that determines what faction of Edencom that you're going to fight.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and then right before Revenant went live, I then got selected by CSP because I got barely scraped by into the top 20 of the CSM 19 elections, and CSP chose me as one of their Make-A-Wish Foundation picks.
That's a good way of putting it.
And then from there, suddenly my internalized plan of we needed a low dev time solution, so CCP will go with it, that needs to limit the damage and then help out the rest with Podgfern, and then I assumed we'd never get anything again for a long time. And instead, CCP Rampant is essentially, during any of his spare time when he's not working on other stuff, because he's obviously working on expansions because he's a game designer. He was working on the Drifter Crisis events. A lot of the sites were his baby. All the sites, I think, were his baby. And in between those, when he has free time, he is then asking me for information. And I'm just assaulting him with information and Excel graphs and what if analysis if we do that. And from there, we've had 3 major patches since then. We've got the opportunities page sorted. So for a little bit of context, one of the kind of unhealthy parts of Podgfern back then was this concept of CCTV characters.
Yep.
So because it is wormhole rules, you can't see anyone. Back then, you couldn't decloak anyone. It was impossible to decloak people unless they disconnected or something like that. So people would have between 27 and 54 characters around the triangle on every single gate. And that's what that would do is, as soon as a flashpoint is completed and despawns, you immediately know where the new one is. That alone is a massive... It lets you get there first.
Yeah.
Which lets you secure the site, lets you cloak the Dixers up. Money making is the reason. And the second reason was, if you had rivals in the area, you knew exactly what fleet comp they were in, because they were warping to a gate where your cloaked eyes were. You knew what direction they were headed in, and you knew their composition, their size, if they're fighting, if they're just undocked, things like that. And that, I don't think it's a hot take that 54 characters as a barrier of entry to get into Podgfern is unreasonable. So they brought in a decloak pulse for the CCTV, which simply, it wasn't, you're not allowed CCTV. It is, AFK CCTV is far too strong. If you want to use it actively, you just have to use it actively. So we coded a decloak pulse it's now every 6 minutes in the DARS transmuter, which is the thing that transmutes the space next to the sun. And also the better part was we gave the benefits of the CCTV to the entire player base. When you're inside Podgfern, you go to the opportunities page, and there is a Triglavian Invasions tab if you're inside Poshvin, and from there, at any range, you can see any of the invasion sites. So everyone knows where they are. It was basically you were all now on more or less a level playing field, and you don't need to buy all these CCTV
Yeah,
accounts.
these
I'm
extra
being correct.
accounts.
I'm being corrected already. It's 9 minutes, not 6. It's a
Yeah,
multiple of it's a multiple of 3 ramping. Come on.
well, you're the time you woke up for this was a multiple of 3 as well. So again, I appreciate you being here and sharing your expertise. For somebody who's like I don't run any of the sites inside of like Pochfin because there is that very strong stigma that it is just a multi-boxer's haven, and for a
and
little,
and it still kind of is.
yeah,
Just it's just the nature of the beast. In hindsight, had I known that I would have had so much dev time available for Podrun, I probably would have recommended to not remake OBS and either remake it into something completely different or get rid of it, because it's a weird thing to advocate for less content for your space, but OBS was so toxic for so long. Not only has it done lasting damage to the economy, like it was a huge part of the inflation issue that we had for the past few years
yeah,
because it was printing so much, it was ridiculous. It was also the only pillar of content in Podfin, and it's kind of like I kind of describe it as Dutch disease. People change their behaviors based on that pillar of content, and as soon as anything touches it, because it affects them in such a big way, then the reaction to it is either very negative or it does behaviors that is not conducive to a healthy ecosystem.
right, right.
So it's definitely been something that we've always had to keep going back to keep addressing pain points because it is the biggest pillar of content. It is harder now, and it prints less money. It is still, for its effort, still ridiculous money.
What's the payouts for a multi-boxing fleet right now compared to what it was?
So it used to be 3.54 trillion,
Whoa, I
billion.
was like, holy shit, what?
3.54 billion per site, and you could run between 3 and 4 in an hour. One if like the triangle was uncontested, which sometimes it was, and also if you get good spawns, because obviously there's travel time in there. So it was 3.54 billion. Now it is 2.25 billion in ISK. It is 450 million in red loot, which is essentially ISK, but there's a step in between. You have to gather it. Do you slow down to go and drop it off, or do you not? So there's some PvP incentive there, and people
Yeah.
can go in and steal it. There was a one of the local multi boxes, which I believe it was Ninja Baby, had gathered all of like a few days or a few weeks worth of his crabbing of the red loot in a single DST, and then I think he went AFK for just a little bit too long, and the DST died and redistributed about 30 billion ESK worth of
Oh
it
my
to the player
gosh.
base. There was also a multi-boxer who I believe is now banned for RMT because you have to go into K-Space to sell the loot. You can't do it inside Poshvin. He went through an Eden com system and got blasted, and it didn't drop. It just disappeared into
Oh
Aether.
no.
That
Well,
was
I'm happy they disappeared from this cheater guy, but oh my goodness.
um. So and yeah, so essentially combined, it's 2.7 billion, which is about what's that? It's about 20% less, roughly,
Yeah.
bit more or less.
Uh,
Which is it's a hefty chunk of change loss, and it's still people are still spinning up multiple packs of 15 characters each. Like it's obviously still worth it by a huge margin.
huge margin. Yeah, I'm constantly seeing like fleets of Bargas ripping around, and they're just like you can't do anything against them as a small like MPSI small gang group against
Mhm.
these guys. Just basically have to sit there, warp off, watch them blap your mobile warp disruptors, and then just like and then go back and spend like 10 minutes setting back up so that they don't come and one tap your entire fleet.
Yeah, it's with the in a recent patch what we did. There's been two recent patches, recent-ish. One was we've but use the some of the spare risk we had from the faucet reduction to redo and pop up all the small sites, because all the smaller sites previously were not worth doing at all. It didn't matter if you did the drone one, which is relative, can either be really easy and doable with a single medium smart bomb or just a T1 frigate. That would pay out up to 8 million ISK. Or if you did the drifter one, which could multiple times spawn drift
A hive mind
the
thing.
battleships,
Yeah.
they're just the drifter battleships, which is worse.
Oh, okay.
That, and if you managed to do that on your own, you would also get 8 million.
Oh my gosh.
And yeah, in the drone one, you could get the super carriers. There was two super carriers. One was extremely deadly and impossible to hit because its stats were wrong, and it had only a 15-meter sig radius, and it shield boosted loads. It did a lot of damage. That took a long time to kill, and you'd only get 8 million. And the even bigger one, which didn't have any weapons, took even longer to kill, and it only paid out 8 million. So it just balance wise, it was a travesty. That's now redone and also provides a salvage and hacking opportunity in there. Just some extra content we put in.
That's awesome. Um, do you know if there was a reason why it was so just like everything was just thrown inside the obs and not in these other sites, or was the idea?
It wasn't. Definitely don't think it was planned. So the obs payouts never changed to what they were in the invasion content. But the invasion content, because so many people were doing it, they had scaled it in a way where they wanted to incentivize less fleets for more combat. And obviously, even then, people would still run in like 40, 50, 60 people or so. And it was only until that went away, Podsham was formed, nothing worked for like, it was formed in October 2020. And it wasn't until like mid-January or late January 2021 that a different dev had finally gotten around and was working with the locals at the time, which was Stribog Clade, and the Kybernauts and Three Glav, which was a Russian community. They were working with CCP at the time. This was before I came to the region. And they eventually got one of the sites working, which was this site. And it had, getting that working was also like took a long time. It couldn't be completed, and then when it could be completed, it gave you negative standings, so you couldn't take the gates, which were locked to standings at the time. And then they fixed that, and then the payout didn't work, and then eventually it worked, and they were like, "All right, don't touch it again." And that's just why it kind of got stuck like that.
Jesus, yeah, that's crazy. Like I'm thinking like 2020. I'm like that's not that long ago, and they released this entire new area of space, or they shut down a whole bunch of systems in game and turned them into the Pochvan, and like things were just not working on release. That's so crazy, even in 2020.
Yeah, it was essentially they ran out of time working on it, and I think just the final critical bits just
Yeah.
weren't ready. You can still see the parts of it which I still want to address if we get the ecosystem in a perfectly healthy state. Well, perfect's probably the worst thing to use because nothing's ever perfect.
Yeah.
Once that's all sorted, there's kind of like a gravy list of things I want to work on with Rampant. One of them is the anchorages. If you ever get your standings up to 6.0 or use a home filament, there's these big, beautiful anchorages that do absolutely nothing. You can't interact with them. They literally just sit there. You can't dock. You can't do anything with them. So I kind of want to make them. I think probably the best use for them will be to make them like a dockable structure. If we have the assets for that is a different question. I hope we do. I'm assuming the art team had done something for it. But that having some sort of hub system in Podgrin would be quite good, which would have something like bonuses to industry based on your standings or industry manufacturing, reprocessing, things like that.
Yeah.
Just one, because one of the home systems has no stations, which is not a home system. Like, there's why would you have your hub of activity for one of the clades not have a single station? It makes no sense.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. You're right.
And also, it's just an incentive for people who have lived in the region and do have the standings. It makes there's actually a reason to want to go there. Which at the moment, there was a reason previously when the Isogen crisis was happening, when the prices were super high. The home fields were like really lucrative. They still are kind of lucrative, but not as much as they were.
Yeah, it would be really nice to have like a reason to get your trig standing up really high. Like before, it was like so that you can use those gates, but now since you and and like CCB Rampage have dropped the standings as much as you have, it's made it so much easier
Yeah.
for like
Yeah, and
day
you'll also
trippers.
you'll also notice the standings drop. They are now all multiples of 3. This is now law accurate.
Oh, there we go.
It's no longer 7.0 standings to get into the home systems. It's 6. It's no longer 4 standings for some of the station services. 3.
Oh my god, the flavor win is out of this world. That's awesome.
If you go and delve into the like the actual data on like EREF and stuff, you'll notice that a lot of the mechanics, a lot of the NPCs are like weighted to the number 3 now.
Awesome.
So
That's so funny.
it's even under the hood is kind of been like a very law accurate running joke slash obsession. And
Um,
also what Blind 238 says, the Fable Boujon. I assume that wasn't ready for a Podron release anyway, but is a gate that is deactivated in every single home system. Maybe that could go to Boujon. I think I would need a lot more dev time for that though.
yeah, that's like opening a whole new can of worms. Like there's so many other things
Mhm.
that they want to work on. In in our brief conversation we had before we started the stream, you said that you've done a whole lot of stuff for on CSM 19, but it was mostly like quality of life things. Is there something that you're really proud of you want to go over really quickly from last year's being on the CSM?
Um, I would. There's a lot of things I'm proud of. Obviously, the Podron changes I'm most proud of. I would say its effect on the economy is probably the biggest win. So I also worked alongside Oz, who is on the CSM, has been for 2 years. He also was tackling economy issues coming from the other side. Things like so he identified the wormholes were a problem. They were printing 20 trillion ISK a month at one point, and that's come down a little bit. He identified Podron, which was printing up to 22 trillion ISK a month. That is now down to just over half. The September MER is out now, and if my maths are correct, I had a spreadsheet somewhere. I'll have to find it again. I'll find it. Where is it? It's here. So between that's not it. There it is. So between start of November last year to the end of September, Podron has printed 107 trillion less than it would have if these changes hadn't gone through. Yeah,
Holy
it's
smokes, that's so much
yeah.
ISK.
One of the like criticisms I get from some of my detractors from an alliance in there that also gets banned regularly for RMT, and there was a ban rave this week which targeted them. So I don't really pay them too much mind, but one of their criticism is I don't play enough, and their evidence is my destruction on Zkill. I think 107 trillion in under a year is not bad going.
Oh my god, yeah. I just broke a trillion ISK on my main character. And that took me 5 years. You doing it in like in a year? This is amazing.
Yeah, it does. It probably doesn't count as actual like full PvP because
It's a
it's
form of PvP. It's like it's sort of
yeah,
like market PvP, but you're deleting like red assets rather than
yeah.
that's
And for the people that had what is still being printed, less of that is going to the multi-box as well. It's now being spread out more along the like smaller macro gang. Um, it's still obviously the big bulk is
yeah.
still OBS, and then we've got the vigilance points, which are as a new content, which is one we took and reused from the Drifter Crisis event. Then you've got the small sites and the excuse me from the for the small gangers because it supports essentially 1 to 3 people in those sites.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. Like I guess like that's comparing like I live in a C5 wormhole, so like in C5 wormholes and C6 wormholes, that's where the majority of blue loot's being spawned in. And I guess that could be compared to like obs. So it sort of makes sense. Like you have like you put a lot of risk on grid, you should be getting more of a payouts. But it is amazing that like all of this loots that was basically going to a couple of cheaters, RMTers, input broadcasters is now being spread out more evenly across the player base. Because
Yeah.
when I first started playing the game and people were telling me about Pochven, again it's just like it's a boogeyman zone. Like even like I don't want to say it was worse, but it was less attractive to me than wormhole space, just because it was
Yeah.
just like there's yeah.
It is Podford definitely is just it's a strange place. There's nowhere in Eve kind of like it, just because no matter where you go, like you're being hunted. It like by other players or by NPCs. There's always something around the corner. It's kind of like there's always a bigger fish in Podford,
Yeah.
sort of. Uh, yeah, the community in there kind of ranges from giga toxic to like really wholesome. The giga toxic is kind of spawned from the RMT issue and the fact which stemmed from the fact it printed so much money. Um, it kind of culminated before I was on CSM was so there was essentially two large groups of multi-boxers. Both sides had RMT issues in the past. One of them still does, as far as I'm aware. And one of the people went from one side to the other, which was, bit of rivalry, like, oh yeah, no, we've got your friend, and then there was a like a friendly-ish spat as they were fighting over the ISK resource until and it's still insane that this happened until the guy who left that group camped the leader into a um into a station for a week and was also running his mouth while doing it. That leader, enraged, offered a 50 billionist bounty for every piece of real life information on this guy that left. Some people took him up on that, and they found out where he lived, his job, his family, his addresses, all that stuff. I obviously won't share, who he is
Yeah,
or
of
where he
course. Yeah.
lived, but they they are a Russian community. They figured out that he had an exemption to conscription, and this was during the peak time of conscription where the conscripts were getting sent to Volodar in Ukraine, which had something like a 95% attrition rate for those conscripts. And then they threatened and also bragged that they went through with it, but later pulled it back after CCP nuked them from orbit. Um, they essentially contacted the local police doing conscription and said, this person, here's his address, he's got a fake medical certificate or whatever. You need to go and conscript him, which in my mind is quite frankly fucking a murder attempt.
Yeah, no, it is 100%.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That well, like
When
I've heard
yeah.
like stories like that in Eve before, like somebody going to somebody's house and like cutting their internet so that somebody can go get a kill on a Titan way
Yeah.
back in the day.
It's
But it's crazy.
it's absolutely ridiculous that it even got to that point. I got involved and kind of risked a ban because I was weighing in on GM decisions, which is stepping on some toes. But in my mind, it wasn't going fast enough, and they come to me and say, "Look, this isn't progressing very fast." Um, so I annoyed some people, but ultimately got CSP to look at it like as closely as they could with in a player safety sense, and the result was they were absolutely merciless. They didn't just obliterate that one guy; they obliterated everyone that is remotely connected to him, um, to do with like the Pochvan and like an RMT network. And then from kind of that point onwards, that has always been a bit of a special eye from team security looking at Poshrin because they realized then it was so toxic in like a cheating and RMT regard, and which then became a player safety issue. So from that, which is another one of my like kind of pride points for this past year, is so the CSM don't get to interact with team security, even though we're under NDA, because they are team security. Um, anything that we give them is a one-way system. They do not tell us anything else. But despite that, I've kind of established a rapport with them. So the way it is kind of set up now for input broadcasting is the main one, but RMT, if people get information, people give me the information. If it's RMT, I immediately pass it directly on to the manager of team security. He will just say yes, received, and then that's it. Then I'm completely hands off. And if it's input broadcasting or cheating, I've made some tooling of my own which parses log files really quickly and says, like, in this section of area, this is the first activation from the guns of these set of people, and it was X amount in the first second, X amount in the second, onwards and onwards. So from there, it's easier to get a gauge if it is actually input broadcasting or not, because some people will, like, they'll die, they'll be annoyed and emotional and say this guy's cheating, and they send it to you and it clearly isn't cheating, like it's for every tick for 5 ticks over 20 characters. That's well within reasonable performance for a normal human being. And if they were all hooked up, like 50 sentries hooked up to one drone bunny, that's obviously an in-game mechanic why they're all shooting at the same time, so that's not cheating. But if it looks reasonable and likely that they are cheating, I then say, okay, can you do this specific way of reporting a bot? I will then go to team security and just say, these people have reported a bot on this time. Here's the backing evidence that I've done. And then they will say, either they won't say anything or they'll say received. And then from then they'll do their own investigations when they have time. And it's worked. It's worked extremely well. I would say multiple hundreds, like maybe like 1,000 or more accounts have been banned in the last year and a bit through this process.
That's
And that's
amazing.
input broadcasting, RMTing. That's not just Podron, that extends outside as well. Obviously, it's not fixed RMT, it's not fixed botting because they're everywhere. But it's kind of one of those battles where you can only do as much as you can.
Right. I have a friend, Max Nero in Amazon, and he's been people have always said that he's like doing input broadcasting. So he's shown me like what people report for him, and he's shown me his logs and stuff. And it's kind of interesting, sort of the information you can parse out from people doing different activities. I'm like, okay, well, that's like obviously like not a input broadcaster, because I'm sure for input broadcaster, like all the guns have to go off at the exact same time or across
not necessarily. So initially when I started out making the tooling, that was what I was looking for. Like if they're all in the same second and there was over like 10 of them is a big one, because a computer can't really consistently do 10 at a time from you spamming on a keyboard.
Yep.
That was kind of one of the metrics we went by. But from then, informants have given me input broadcasting like software on how it works, and they show how it spreads out over time naturally. And at that point, it's kind of right. Okay, if it spreads out enough that it's indistinguishable from human input, then even though it is input broadcasting, it's the amount of false positives will be too high. So, and also they've got no advantage. So that kind of like, I kind of ease off there. But because on some of the softwares you can tweak the timings, they will tweak it so it is an advantage, and then you can see it consistently over patterns. And that was sort of where I was looking from that point. And obviously CCP has much better granularity in their server logs, so we only see it every time our client updates, and that can be influenced by the lag, any issues in the server, any tie-dye, any lag that I have, any jitter that I have, any lag that the other person has, and any jitter the other person has. So it's not the Bible on what actually happened. It's just a good indication. Then CCP can see their logs, which doesn't do it on a per second tick. it's they can see it down to, I assume, down to like the
Right.
millisecond or something.
Right. Cool. Um, just because I have not to rush the interview or at all. Again, I really appreciate you being here. That's such a weird hour
I've woken up
for
now.
you.
We're good. We've
Yeah,
had the cup of
awesome.
tea.
Um, if you were to get reelected to CSM this year, which again I'm very hopeful for you, what are some things you would like to continue working on? Because you sort of said a little bit earlier that um, you did a lot this year, but there's still so much more that you want to change or to improve upon.
So much more. So the like extended plan for Podfin isn't done. So there's quite a few sites that haven't been rebalanced and redone. There's the Stellar deployment at the center of every system. That just needs not dissecting, that just needs pulling out some bug fixes and then put back in the dynamic dungeon system. The World Arc Flashpoint, which is the other like very lucrative site in Podfin, that needs a lot of work. That does need to be dissected because it is so buggy. We've had a few, I think we've had 3 bug fixes in the past 6 months because there was a way that people were able to put it in a state where it can't be completed at all. So if they do a certain thing before downtime, downtime happens. After that, it can't be completed unless a dev comes in and uses GM commands to nuke the site. So we fixed a bug. They found another way of doing it. We fixed that bug, and now there is a different bug where it completes, but it completes more than once, which is not ideal. But it's better than not being able to complete it, and completing it multiple times is not a huge like ISK force it, and it nukes your trig standings as well. So it's in a better spot than it is, but that needs pulling out and having a lot of work done on it. Wormholes need to be addressed. So one of the big bugs we removed was the sleeping AI bug. So previously, if you went to a small site in Podfin for standings, the NPCs inside, if they hadn't been interacted with before, as after they had spawned, they would move for a little bit and then stop. And that's it. They were asleep entirely. You could do whatever you wanted with them until one of them died, and then they would all wake up. So that's been fixed for the small sites. The wormhole side of it hasn't been fixed because it's just because those sites specifically, the AI is slightly different from what I understand. The only downside is on the wormholes, there are 64 dungeons to fix individually. So
A lot of
that's
dev
kind of why,
time.
yeah, it's a lot of late nights for CCP Rampant, which is kind of why it hadn't been done. There's also tweaks that need to be happened to the wormholes themselves just to sort of solve some projection issues. The statics are the wrong way around. So if a wormhole closes, you can never open it from the Podfin side. It's always on the case-based side. I want to flip that. And it was kind of like the second part of the filament change that I got through, which is the filament change that made Podfin, like the Podfin highway, far more risky to use, which was like something that had again made the K-space economy like a bit worse because people weren't actually going through gates if they wanted to go from null or low sec to Jita. They would just take 2 filaments, they would go into Podfin, and they would hop out of Podfin, and they were near Jita.
Yeah.
So now there's a bit of risk involved in that. On top of that, there's more bug fixes here and there to be done. The big bulk of all the small ones are kind of done. And then there's like the anchorages I want to get done, and a load of like small bonuses that I just wanted it to get to a feature complete region for the first time in its existence. That's kind of the goal for that. Outside of that, I have been doing work with CCPK1P1 on accessibility options. So in my youth and even still now, I listen to very loud music. So I am quite hard of hearing. And my family happens to have quite a lot of genetics to do with colorblindness. So my brother's colorblind.
Yeah.
So I had noticed that the colorblind options in Eve are kind of crap. They don't affect a lot of the things that need to be effective. For example, if you are green-red colorblind and you want to use the colorblind options to change the color of if a module is active or overheated, it doesn't change those. So yes, it's very hard to see. So there's some stuff in there I've been working with that hasn't come out that I hope does, and I want to continue some more work on that. For the deaf side, there was 2 examples that I gave to CCP, which are really good case studies. So Fortnite has probably one of the best implementations of like deaf-friendly design. In your targeting reticle, it will show a symbol of the type of sound, whether that's someone walking or someone jumping or someone shooting, and it will give the direction. And its opacity is how close it is to you. So you've got
That's really cool.
it represents a 3-dimensional sound space
Yeah.
in a visual form. It's really like for I'm a boomer now. I've had to accept that I've grown old and I'm not a Fortnite dude, but that is genuinely amazing game design, I think, as far as accessibility goes. Another version which I used as a case study was Final Fantasy 14, which I used to play. You could have sound bars on both sides of your screen, and it was just like if you've installed Winamp or something, you've seen if you listen to music, it has the sound bars. That's all it is.
Yeah.
But with Final Fantasy 14, you can also tweak very which sounds you want to hear, if it's specific spells or if it's only enemy spells. And because you can do that, someone who is deaf can have it so these bars only trigger when the sounds that they want to know about actually go off. So then they can learn the patterns of how the bars move, and from there you can infer the mechanic that has happened. So that is another example that I gave.
It's amazing. Like in my C5 corp, I have several colorblind friends, and then I also have somebody who is hearing impaired, or I think he's almost completely deaf. So
Mhm.
hearing that we have people on the CSM that are looking very seriously at accessibility is something that's actually really cool.
Yeah. And it's not just me as well. So Kashal is also big on accessibility in Eve Rookies, and Dujek has done some stuff. I can't remember off the top of my head what it was, but I know he has done stuff. Sorry, Dujek. And also a different CSM candidate, Sven Holstein. Some of his suggestions paired up with me. He's made mock-ups of UI elements which have duplicates. So, for example, ECM bursts are the exact same icon as a multi-racial, multi-spectrum ECM jammer. So if you're in a pickle and you're in your Widow and you have both of them, one of these is the ECM burst that saves you, and one of them is the ECM module that doesn't save you. You don't know which one's which. So he's also done some color design stuff. So I helped get one of his changes through, which is why the fuel isotopes for Black Ops and Capital fuel bays are now colored.
Yep.
And also they have a symbol to distinguish between them if you're colorblind.
Oh, that's amazing. I love that. That's so great. Cool. That's amazing. It I do have Colitis waiting for his interview. Is there any final words or any messages you want to tell to the people at home or the people who might be watching this later on YouTube?
I would just say I hope people vote me. I was given a massive what would you say, vote of confidence by CCP by being selected for CSM 19. I think in my mind I've definitely lived up to that expectation, and I hope the player base echoes that and will vote for me. If you don't want to vote for me, I will just say do your research into the candidates to find the ones you like, and it is important that you vote for him because over my time on CSM 19, I think we've absolutely killed it as a year of CSM together. CCP really does respect CSM as an institution. I would say even more so after CSM 19 because the expansions have been like generally so well received, and anything that has been pain points, we've had a quick feedback loop with CCP, which they've then addressed more or less. So I would do the research and find people that not only will represent the space that you're in and champion the things that you want, but also consider how they will foster a relationship with the devs. Because just getting elected CSM 19 doesn't mean you're going to get changes through. 90% of the work is so we have our weekly CSM meetings, we all talk together, we have the CSM summit, which is a week in Iceland, but the big bulk of the work is in the after hours. We all like starburst out and we go to our separate devs, and that's where the real work that's where all of our like pet projects get done, essentially.
Yeah, like out of all the CSM candidates that I've interviewed, the amount of work, just like looking through your list of things that you have done specifically for your community and for the player base at large, with going after cheaters, after RMTers, after like the IRL threat stuff, that stuff just is absolutely amazing and makes me really, really confident to be like, yes, I will probably be voting for you and be telling other people to vote for Drake. And then also all the Pochman stuff, because I personally am not very attracted to Pochman, but with the recent changes, I've been going out there just a little bit more lately, and it has been like in the last 5 years, it's turned from a place that I just like absolutely attest. I only use it as a way to get from nullsec to highsec using the filaments, to being like a place I actually want to go and hang out and do some like small gain roams. So all the stuff that you've been doing for the past year has been absolutely fantastic, and from me personally, thanks, buddy. This is really cool.
Yeah, thank you. It's good that people are definitely enjoying it, and I fully understand that Podgefin is kind of like a bad word to say in some cohorts. People just don't like what it has done to the economy and what it's taken away from their space, and I totally get that. I've just gone under the operation of leave it in a much better position than when you found it, and I think I've done that so far.
Oh,
and it's
100%.
it's also insane that this guy who made like shitpost videos and ran around feeding maledictions to steal money in Podgefin is then kind of like turned around to
to be like a
kind of be a savior. I don't want to like self-aggrandize that much, but
well,
it's kind of like what happened.
Yeah, going like completely 180 is absolutely amazing. Cool. Well, thank you so much, Drake, for waking up crazy early, and I hope you enjoy doing Warhammer painting. I'm guessing, or just...
I've got some Grey Knights conversions to do to convert them into Primaris. I need to paint.
Oh, awesome! Cool. All right. Well, you have yourself a great rest of your morning, I guess, and I will hopefully talk to you soon.
Peace. Thank you for the interview.
Bye bye. Yay! He was awesome. Yay! I know. Like like a couple of the people that I've interviewed. Like I already know I'm going to vote for, just based off just having conversations with them. And Drake, just because, like, I don't know, his his reputation precedes himself quite a bit, and so, like, looking through his CSM stuff, there was a network error. Reload. Okay. Sort of goes into how much detail and how much work he's done this year in order to sort of improve an area of space that needs a little bit extra love and appreciation. Cool, awesome. I am going to I have Coltitus that I'm going to be interviewing now, and I would I want to respect his time as well. So we're going to I'm not going to take a little break. I'm going to say hello, and we're going to fucking get going. So I'm just going to tell him to get the fuck in here, and we're going to go for a rip. Going right away. Cool. Oh my goodness. One thing that I'm realizing from like doing these interviews is that a lot of these guys who are going for CSM are kind of like big deals, and they are kind of like